What is up, everybody? This is Headhunters live, coming at you, live on a beautiful Thursday, July 25th. And we have a really special guest today, Steve Isenberg. And today we'll be talking all about marketing for your staffing firm. Now, before we get into the details here, everybody probably already knows me. My name is David Stephen Patterson, but my friends call me DSP. And over here, we have the best looking man in the biz, Chris Wessel, who I still been trying to get him to send me his skincare routine, and he is holding it close to the chest. And over here, we have my brother from another mother, Steve Neil. Sorry.
Oh, Jesus.
Neil Lebovitz is and I haven't done that in a long time. Neil Lebovitz.
So not only did you not mess my name up, but I love how you start the show saying, well, you probably know me, but let me introduce you to these two clowns. And we've been on 200 shows together, and I think they should know us all equally, you egotistical son of a gun.
Hey, you know, they if I were just a little more humble, I'd be perfect. They say humility is my best quality. But anyway, that said, we're going to have a great show today, guys. If you're catching this live, do me a favor, comment live below. Also, give us a like or a love. In fact, every like or a love means an extra deal that you will close this year. So if you want to be closing some extra deals this year, give us lots of likes and loves. All right. Helps the algorithm. Share the show. If you're watching the replay, comment replay. So before we get into this, and this is going to be a really cool show because this is going to be going into some topics that most of our shows really don't cover, things like SEO and websites for search firms, right? And usually most of us don't talk about that. So this is going to be a very interesting show. But before we get into it, I do want to mention our sponsors. And we eat our own cooking, so we actually sponsor ourselves. And our one of our best sponsors is Neil's company, Back Office Staffing Solutions. So if you are if you're sick and tired of the feast and famine, just the ups and the downs, no billing for 2 months, then you bill something for maybe third month in the quarter. It's just always like that. Get some staff augmentation or contracting in your life. It'll de-stress you like you wouldn't believe, provide recurring revenue, and it's better serves your clients because clients, especially in a downturn, they look for temporary solutions or workforce augmentation. Yet contracting has a lot of teeth. You got to fund payroll. You got to figure out insurance. There's a whole back office thing and taxes and legal stuff.
It's a hassle.
Yeah, and as cavemen and recruiters, we can't figure it out. So use a firm like Neil's. He handles the entire back end. It's a seamless solution. And if you want to get started, 2 ways you can do that. You can check out a free training that Neil has called the Gross Margin Method, how to increase profitability within your staffing firm. Go to backofficenow.com/GMM, or you just go to backofficenow.com for a demo. Also, if you're looking to deploy sales and marketing system for your firm, I'll keep some brief because I really want to get to this interview. What we do here is we help search firms to deploy sales and marketing systems in 30 days with a 90-day ROI guarantee. Go to thedigitalheadhunter.com/build. And let me tell you, you will not see another system like this. This is extremely effective. It's both marketing and hands-on prospecting, right? It's aggressive. Right now in this market, you need to be. And last but not least, Chris Wessel. Chris Wessel, many of you guys already know, he's actually still in the business as opposed to myself and Neil. He is actively recruiting to this day. He's a really good biller, but he also helps place VAs. Think about VAs. It's kind of a minefield with hiring VAs. Most of them have no idea how to source. They don't know how to work with recruiters. So Chris can help you find a VA. And they're not necessarily pre-trained necessarily, but he can show you and walk through the minefields of how to onboard a good VA, how to retain them, and also how to train them in all the different recruiting methodologies and sourcing tools that they need to operate. So if you're interested in that, go to chriswessel.com and check that out. So that said, I think we're ready to bring on our guests. Good. You guys ready? Ready to rock and roll?
All right. Is.
All right, so Steve Isenberg, the man of the hour, welcome. I want to put you right there, right next to Neil.
He has been locked in David's basement for the last half hour.
We call that the GIMP room. Chris.
Bring
My
out the
wrists,
hammer.
Get it
Chris,
right.
my wrists are sore from being locked up here. I have to.
I thought he had the fuzzy handcuffs. No.
Yeah, well,
You weren't complaining, Steve. You were not complaining.
I
I
didn't
know
say
your
I was
safe word. You never
complaining.
used it. For those who don't know, my safe word is Oklahoma. Anyway,
I think he's a little too comfortable with us. This is
so Steve, just so for the folks who don't know who you are, who are you and what do you do?
Perfect. Thanks. And hey, appreciate the opportunity. Happy to be here. Yeah, ASJ Partners. ASJ are my three kids. I started the firm in 2007, and our expertise is really the human capital space. So that's staffing firms, recruiting firms, RPOs, PEOs, and then service providers into them. We're a full service marketing firm. We have a staff of 14. We're a little unique in that we are custom. We provide a unique solution for every client because we believe every client comes to us with a unique value proposition and some different market differentiators. So we're not template driven. We're not off the shelf. And we really provide, a plethora of services, website development, blogging, email marketing, Google advertising, SEO, logo development, pretty much everything but TV and radio. But unless you're one of Neil's old companies like Adecco or something, there's not a lot of people doing TV and radio these days.
Well, I do want to dive into some specific value that we can share with recruiters who are watching this, especially some of the smaller folks who have no idea how to really market their business beyond just the typical down for dollars. But before we dive into all of that, I was curious what led you to where you're at now, because you come from the staffing world, right?
I don't necessarily come. My previous job before I started, I was with a national firm called Today's Staffing. Today's Staffing was owned by CDI. Today's had about 100 offices in North America, did about $300 million. CDI is, about $1.2 billion. They were based out of Philly. I was recruited there. But my background is really tech. I'm an MBA finance, which is not a normal progression into running a marketing firm. But when I was an executive at Today's, one of the I had sales, I had onboarding, I had recruiting, I had marketing. And, the marketing aspect interests me. And in doing research, there's not a lot of firms that really focus into the space, the staffing space and recruiting space. It's really one of maybe a handful of markets in the world that you have two end users. Most people that do marketing or own a company build a product and pass it down the line to one particular user. But in staffing and recruiting, you have a value proposition to bring a client in, and you have a different value proposition to bring a candidate in. And, most marketing firms, when I'm talking with clients, don't really understand that. We don't necessarily do anything different than your local marketing firm. They just don't understand the space and what it takes to bring a candidate in and why that's a little different from bringing in a client.
%. Well, speaking of that, I do agree with you. So I'm in a similar space, a little bit different. Then I'll do some of the same things you do in terms of SEO and a Google pay-per-click and all that kind of jazz. But I do agree with you in that. In fact, when I talk to my clients or other firms, and they have used other marketing services who are not recruiting specific, it is a totally different world because there's a very unique business. And
Right.
on top of that, we're in a sort of business where for a lot of companies selling a product, right? You go to a company and they're kind of you're selling like an ERP or an IT system, and they already have another system that's already implemented. They don't need what you have. They may not need what you have for years. But in our world, you can talk to somebody one day and they said, we don't have any needs. We don't use recruiters. We hate recruiters. We're not even hiring and all that kind of jazz. And then tomorrow, their best person quits. They become your best client. And so the type of marketing you need to do to be in front of those people and to build a brand is a lot different than what you would normally see in any other marketing. At least that's the way I've viewed it.
Yeah, that ongoing top of mind awareness, because you just never know. And you just want to be, you can't be constant, but it's got to be recent enough that when that acute need pops up, they're like, oh, that's right. Or when you reach out and you call them and they're like, oh, I've heard of you.
You know what?
Well,
people underestimate top of mind. Go ahead, Steve.
Right.
Go ahead, Steve.
I was just saying, today's market, you need to have 7 to 10 touches. So what a lot of marketing does, and you guys can speak to it too, is most people outside view it somewhat, our space, staffing and recruiting, is somewhat of a commodity, right?
Sure.
You do what everyone else does. So the further you get away from a cost discussion, and the further people know who you are, the better chance when that need comes in and they reach in the filing cabinet and look at the first 17 staffing firms that came in, that you're increasing the chances that you get the call, because even though it's an inconsistent market, by the time they call 2 or 3 firms, that position's been filled.
Very, very true. Yeah, so top of mind marketing nurturing is extremely important, just for those exact same reasons that you mentioned, and as well as everybody else. And one thing I've noticed as well is that it's not just about the 7 to 10 touches, or 8 to 12, whatever the number is. People tend to think of it as a linear thing: email 1, email 2, email 3. I always describe it as chaotic. It's see email over here, voicemail over here, see a LinkedIn post over here, article over here, advertisement over here, media conference over here, email over here, and just over time they build up this mind share of who you are. And I think, and I'm mad as you would agree, marketing in a lot of ways, like everyone talks about a marketing funnel, but it's really kind of chaotic in a lot of ways, right?
That's excellent, Dave, because you are correct in terms of, I like to say, they're spokes on a wheel, and you need to figure out how many of those spokes you want people to see you, right? In today's world, you got the digital space, you got the social space, you got the traditional tried and blue space and things like that. So, the more a firm can have more of those spokes out there, and more top of mind and drip marketing and inbound type of marketing, the better chances are that they're growing their brand. And we certainly find that the firms that do consistent marketing typically take more market share in their market.
Well, and not just the actual channels and the cadence and all that stuff and the different platforms, but also the messaging too, right?
Yep.
Because you could be on all the platforms and you could have
Correct.
the right rhythm, but like if your messaging is off or your targeting is off, you're not converting, right? And I imagine, like, because you're specializing in the space, like you're probably like, there's a lot of different ways a recruiter can differentiate, especially if they're creative. Like, what have you seen there in terms of like what recruiters can do in their work with you, or just in general, to differentiate? Because a lot of times we think very one-dimensionally, right? We're like, I specialize in this, I specialize in that. Pick an industry, pick a function, but like there's more you can do there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say one of the biggest things that we find when, certainly when recruiters are coming in is, they'll say, Steve, I got a call from a potential client, and they're like, okay, your fee is X, but Bob down the road is X less 4%. And my first response is, well, if Bob down the road is so good, why are you calling me? Right. So, but once again, now that main discussion is a price discussion. So what we educate our clients is, the more you can articulate your value proposition, whether that is you're unique and you only do IT staffing, or you're unique in the way you recruit or source, whatever it is, the more you show a client that you do something different, the further you get away from that cost discussion. Because if it's only cost discussion, we all know that there's some lower cost provider out there. And if you're in at that procurement level, you're screwed, because procurement's job every year is to cut, service costs 5 to 10%. So at some point you're not going to be there. But the more a recruiter or a staffing firm can differentiate what they do, whether it's you're a broad service, whether you're a narrow service, the better your chances you're getting away from that cost discussion.
Well, and I think that's
one of the biggest.
Sorry, Neil.
No, go ahead.
Real quick, I think the reason why a lot of recruiters, maybe if they've been doing it for 20 years like me, need to talk to someone like Steve, talk to someone like David, is I think, and I've been guilty of this myself, is we think very kind of one-dimensionally on these things. We only have a couple cards to play that we know of in terms of differentiating. Most of us say the same shit, just 3 different ways, right? Versus like, if you really are unique, okay, like dig into that. Like, what's your story? Like, were you a practitioner who now recruits in that space? Okay, that's at least more unique than someone else that's in that space. Do you have some particular aspect of your engagement model that is different than other recruiters, or not just, we can find people other people can't? Like, you know what I mean? So I think that's why you really need to consult with a marketing professional to open up your thought process on that if you really do want to stand out.
And most
Yeah, and
recruiters,
Steve, I just to say, I was going to ask the same thing, but just with a little reverse. So, what do you see as the common pitfalls when you first meet with these people who went to Wix, or they just have a basic website and they think they're marketing? So, similar question.
and that's a great question too, Neil. I mean, I think the real issue you have to assess with your website is that's the first impression someone's going to get on your firm. And whether you're billing 2, 3, 4 million, whether you're billing $500,000 or whatever. Now, I mean, I do it for a living, but I can quickly look at a website and I don't even have to scroll down, and I can tell you whether someone built that professionally or someone built that from a Wix or a GoDaddy or something. And I think a lot of the things they're missing are certainly in the back end, the SEO keywords, right? When you do a website, SEO is important because I like to say that's kind of the basement of your house. If you don't have a basement, the house might not stand. But even just the call to action, you have 5 seconds when someone comes to your website to let them know what you're doing. I mean, Mike Small, who's our lead designer, is like, your website's not there to entertain them. You got 2 people coming to your website. You got someone looking for work that wants to click and fill out some type of form, or you're looking at a job seeker. And all the sites we track, about 95% of your site visitors are job seekers. And if he or she in one click can't apply for a job, they're gone. Because when you're looking for a job, you're looking to submit a resume. If that's how you're doing it quickly and you want to feel productive, and if you got to search through and find, or you can't find someone's phone number or how to contact them, your history. So
now, well, speaking of that, actually, I want to piggyback if you don't mind. When you talked about differentiating, right? Because as we mentioned, everybody puts an ass in a seat. That's what we do. We put asses in seats. All right. But there's obviously lots of different ways of doing that and being just a specialist. Well, it's good. At the same time, everybody's a specialist anyway. So everybody's a specialist. We all find the best candidates. And so, going back to the website, find ways to differentiate yourself on your site. As you mentioned, they've got a few seconds, so they're going to bounce. Like, how do you differentiate? So beyond, and I do want to dive into SEO, because that's a whole nother thing as far as finding the site. But let's say somebody goes to a website, right? If the person on the website only has they're on there for 8 to 10 seconds, whatever. How should a firm try to differentiate themselves on that very first front page to get somebody to stick? Like, how would you?
Okay,
above the fold.
Yeah, no,
yeah, above the fold.
Obviously above the fold. Obviously, web development has changed now that through social media and things like that, we know to scroll. Right, 5 years ago, no one knew to scroll and things like that. But I would say one of the most important things is your hero image, which is the large image that shows above the fold. In that space that you have available, you need to very quickly, in a few words, let that job seeker know what your business is. Are you staffing? Are you IT? Are you medical? Are you locatenum? Are you warehouse? Because if I pop to it and I don't know what it is, now a lot of times it's pretty obvious, James staffing firm. Okay, at least I know you're staffing, but you need to quickly articulate either with a picture or some scrolling in words what you do, so that when I get there, I know what you do. We've all been to websites and you're like, okay, what does this company do and what do they want me to do? So you need to have call to actions very quickly, and as quickly as possible articulate what your value proposition is or how you differentiate from someone else's site that they visited.
What sort of calls to action? Because I've heard that question before. What do you suggest? What are some good tidbits?
We typically tell our clients we want to focus on 3 call to actions, 2 that focus on the candidate and 1 that focus on the client. Apply, search, and then fill out a job order form, whatever you want to call it. But the main thing you want to do is, you remember, as I said, if 95% of your people coming to your site are looking for jobs, man, you better have that search job button very prominent for them, because that's what they're there for. And you also want them to be able to apply. And then you want, on the client side, for them to be able to either find out what your value proposition, how you differentiate, or let me fill out a form to tell you that I have a staffing need and this is what I want and this is where I want.
What about lead magnets, Steve? Like, I mean, people have asked that a lot. That was big in the day. Are you big on that? You know, some sort of giveaway, white paper, something of value to give to them to get them into your drip campaign.
You know, lead magnets are good. I'm a believer that if you want to put some information that's of value on your website, they need to have a conversion form to get that, value. So if you have a white paper, they go to get it, click here, give me your name, give me your email. So yes, it drops into a drip campaign, but more importantly, that lead gets emailed into someone in your firm. But you also want to you don't want to have them click and provide you information just to go to your About Us page. But if you have a salary guide, maybe you want to capture that information or something that you think is a little bit unique. Absolutely. And people do it. I mean, think about when we all go to websites, right? If it's something we're looking for and the information that they're capturing for me is not personal, security number, it's not my age, it's not my demographic, it's my email and maybe my first name or something, and you don't really need much more, that's all good.
Now, okay. So let me add to that actually, 'cause I have some thoughts on that as well. So lead magnets, a little bit of lead magnet as well that I've seen is that, just like you said before, Steve, where you have to differentiate yourself. And if everybody as a specialist and everybody finds the best candidates, we all say the same things. Like, how do you differentiate putting an ass in the seat? Same thing with the lead magnet. I think there's so many top 7 hiring mistakes that, it's just, there's no cachet or value to it. It's nothing different, versus, because I think in B2B, I found that people are less inclined to opt in for something than versus their business to consumer. What I tell my clients is to create lead magnets that are very unique. So yeah, a white paper is a great one because a white paper is a lot, but like a really in-depth white paper with really good information that's very, very specific versus like a 3 or 4 page top 7 hiring mistakes that looks like it could apply to anything and that has it's not unique at all because they've seen that a million times. So that's one thing I think they'll find a lot of success if you make it put more work into it, make it really unique. Like for example, Neil's gross margin method, right? It's like a really unique paper or resource rather, PDF that no one else really has, right? Versus the typical how to get staffing business, which is it's okay, right. but something that very, very specifically solves a specific pain point, then it gets noticed because it's unique. I think that's the big thing that people have to realize with their lead magnet.
We're big when we're producing content of positioning our client as an expert in the space, right? It's not a position that says, here I am, here are me more, here's where you send the check. But, people put one and one together. Wow, what a great article on the new legislation, right? The big thing in staffing now are the NDA is not holding a lot of water in states now, right? Most clients in a staffing firm have their sales people sign NDAs and they can't go anywhere. And a lot of the states are getting rid of that. So putting out value added content about an NDA through a blog, through a white paper or something, put it on LinkedIn, put it on the internet, and it drives them back to your website. We can then show them the traffic through Google Analytics, how many pages and how long they were on the site and the bounce rates less and all that. But yes, you have to provide value add. It's not just, as you said, how to sit and be good in an interview. I think most staffing firms have covered that one, right?
Yeah, you got to comment on the jobs report. You got to comment on the macro thing.
Right.
If you're trying to be viewed as a not just a commodity, and you're trying to be viewed as a business partner, you have to comment on like business topics and larger things that influence that space. I'm curious, like articles versus videos. I mean, and I'm sure you employ both. I mean, what gets like the most traction? Like, do you still want to do articles in like LinkedIn and stuff like that? And like, I'm sure videos are also getting a lot of engagement. Like, I'd love to hear your feelings on like those two channels, because I think a lot of people are probably curious about that.
There are metrics that people love that arrow. They like that little arrow and they click it. But I think like anything, you want to do a combination of both. And what we do for a particular client is let's A/B test these. Let's A/B test a video. Let's A/B test content. And then we will let you know in a few months what the end users in your repertoire of clients or candidates are receptive to, because it's not always just, it always works this way. Now,
Sure.
yes, you do it only for the space, and we can tell you typically what works, but that might not work for your set of end users.
Right.
Now, one thing I will also say when it comes to content is also to look at current events. So, as an example, right? So one of my clients is in the plastic space, right? And in plastics, there's also big debate about plastics, about sustainability, and about it, the environment, and yada yada yada. And so there's lots, of course, activists, that
Right.
are big about banning plastics versus the plastic industry. So obviously, him being in the plastic industry, of course, what side of the fence he sits on, as well as all of his clients and all of his candidates. So I remember I saw a video on Twitter with there's a congressional hearing where plastics activists was being kind of made to look kind of silly by a congressman. And we'll go to the details because I don't want to take one stance or one or the other. But for his audience, they love that kind of stuff. And he took the video, stripped it from Twitter, put it on a special page on his website, and we sent out a top of mind email about that, and that got so much traffic to his website, and that's probably one of his most successful campaigns because it was funny, and it really resonated with the people that he works with because they are, again, not saying one side or the other, but from their perspective, their emotional, unique point of view, they're probably sick and tired of plastics activists. So you're giving them what they want is making a plastic activist look stupid. So if you look at current events or even things that your audience will find really entertaining or funny about their industry, where they could feel like you get it, right? And it's kind of hard to describe sometimes, but you know what I mean? Like you want content where people see it and they think, oh, he gets it.
Right.
She gets it.
Right. And then when you get it and then they're on your website, they figure out what you do. But you also have to be careful. Maybe I'm more conservative than others. We're in a environment where gray doesn't exist as much as it used to. There's black and white, and some people, whether we like it or not, and I always try to figure out where my client resides and what market they're in, is to the personality of or the temperature of that particular area, right? A lot of people, you get towards holidays and want to put a generic holiday post, and some people are like, I'm putting a Christmas post, I don't care, this is what so you need to kind of understand your audience. You typically do get a lot of traction when you put up things from either the left side or the right side, but did you get the right traction? That's what you need to be careful about. And I kind of can offer my opinion, but at the end of the day, I want the client to know that it's what they are comfortable with.
By the way, what is your view
yeah.
on holiday emails and posts? I've resisted doing it because every Tom, Dick, and Harry does it, but people tend to not do. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Well, I can tell you, when an interesting thing is when we send out Thanksgiving Day emails and we put a recipe for a Thanksgiving stuffing or some way to make a turkey, you can't believe the amount of eyes something like that gets. Okay.
Wow.
When it comes to the end of the year, whether you're putting out a Christmas, a New Year's, a generic one, I think it's, what you want to find is the earlier you do, there's kind of like a sweet spot, right? You don't want to do it that last week, because whenever a holiday falls, that week stinks for any type of communication, right? 4th of July comes on a Thursday, maybe Monday the latest, because how many people are taken off that week to begin with anyway? But I think it depends if you're sending everyone, if you're just sending a thank you, make it a little more meaningful than just here's snow falling down from the sky and talk to you in the beginning of the year.
I'm going to do my butternut squash soup recipe on Thanksgiving because it's amazing soup. I love
track
that.
and track the metrics, because everyone's looking for something different.
And also, and along with that, when you send an email like that, or like a Christmas email, Thanksgiving email, actually the recipe is a brilliant idea. Neil's stealing it. I might steal it too.
You
But
should
it's
do a
actually
video,
really
Neil.
good.
You should have like a pot of it. You're stirring. You got a
Yep.
apron on, and just the whole thing.
Yep.
Just
Wearing a
the
hat.
apron.
Cooking with Neil.
But that said, but along with that, telling a story, like so one thing I do every year for Memorial Day, I send an email about the meaning behind it, and that you really don't want to necessarily say thank you for your service. It's more of a Veterans Day thing. It's more about if you have a veteran that is feeling down, be with them, because this day where you remember their fallen brethren. And so I think, when you tell a story, or tell a story about even your personal life, or maybe a lesson, something like where people like to feel good, either like to be entertained or laugh or feel inspired, or like, again, recipes really unique. And so I think, yeah, you're right. Not just the generic stuff, but putting a little bit of personality into it, I think will go a long ways. Long ways.
Or put your staff on, right? Or maybe that's when you send a video. Maybe that's when you send a video. You interview someone in the staff. Hey, thank you. What a great year we had. We have a lot to be thankful for. Yada yada yada.
Right. So what about, let's dive into SEO. That's one area that I want to make sure we cover today, and I want to make sure we have about 10 minutes left. So I want to make sure we dive into that. So maybe most people watch us, I imagine, know what SEO is. Maybe give us a high level overview on just in general what SEO is and how it can help. The recruiters watching this.
Okay. So, Google really has two main services that are used when people come to the internet to look for particular goods and services. They have what's called Google AdWords, and those are the top 3 to 4, and they'll have a little yellow button, might be a little different color on different browsers, that typically show at the top. And then the ones below that, and people pay for those. And then below that are the SEO search, which is what we call organic search. Obviously, you want to be found at the top because most of us don't go past the first page. Most of us don't even go past above the fold, right? So you certainly want to be in the top 3 to 4 of an SEO search. And just think about why you would want to do it is think about when you as a person go to the internet and look for something, how are you finding someone? You're typing in whatever, tire stores in Chicago because you want to find the cheapest tires, and you're clicking on the first couple links. So if I'm looking for your business, how am I going to find your business? But one of those keys really in any space is what words do you want to be found on? When we first started this, staffing firms view themselves as staffing agencies. What we found early on when we started this about 20 years ago was people looking for them viewed them as employment agencies. Well, that's a big difference in Google between typing in the keywords employment agencies and the word staffing agencies. So, understanding who you are and where you want to be found, and even more importantly, picking a few words to be found. You're never going to be found at the top for every word. And understanding, quick story, we had a client that was in kind of a smaller area in Texas, and we got him to number 3 on his SEO search. And he was livid. He goes, Steve, I want to be 1 or 2. I go, 1 is career builder and 2 is monster. And I go, you're not beating them. You are number 1 in your markets. But, so kind of understanding where you are. I like to tell my clients that, if everyone's been running the New York Marathon and doing some SEO and you haven't, they're already at mile marker 12. We might get you caught up by the time the race finishes, but it does take some time. So, understand, you're not going to be found number 1 on jobs and things like that. So you certainly want to understand the market, what keywords are valuable and how you want to be found. But more importantly, Google changes the playing field every 12, 18 months. So you really, and no one really knows what Google changes and how they assign priority for SEO. So that's kind of why it's important where you want to maybe use an outside firm is people that are understanding or tracking what it appears it looks like Google is putting more value on. For a while it was how fast your site loaded. Then it was, how relevant your web, it was on your phone, and they keep changing the metrics they want to do, and rightfully so. It's kind of frustrating to firms like us. But you want to be found. People look for goods and services. So the higher up you are, the greater probability that you are to be found.
Can I
Well,
give
for
a good
somebody,
tip that
oh yeah,
it's a brilliant one, and I don't want to give away my secret sauce for people who do it against me. But one of the things is AdWords can get very expensive,
Yep.
but it's really effective. So what I've shared with some people and what I do is I put my top competitors on there as AdWords. So when people, people don't go to a browser and type in a URL anymore. They type in the name of the company. So there I am. They go to my competitor, type in their name. I show up as the first ad, and it's cheap because you
Yeah.
have to click on it, whatever. So it's a really nice.
And that's a
way
great
to
one
do
too.
that.
But I mean, if you ever, I like cars, so I drive a German brand, and if you put that brand in, the other two German brands show up at the top as well. So exactly what Neil said. But that's the whole thing, is understanding what is really happening in the Google sandbox, right? You are playing in their sandbox. So you want to understand how to play in that sandbox and how to be a winner in the sandbox.
well, so for those folks who maybe aren't ready to go to an agency yet and to help their SEO, let's say they're on a shoestring budget, but they're willing to put in the time and the effort, right? What should they do to start climbing in the SEO rankings for the niche? And secondly, how long does it take?
Okay. I think that the cheapest, most effective way, if you're not going to focus on purely SEO, is to do blogs. Because what happens with a blog is you've created a unique URL and you can put the keywords in that blog. So now when I go to search those particular keywords, I have the opportunity to find that blog URL, which takes me to your website, or the website in and itself. So now you increased the chances twofold that you got found. So imagine if you do a blog every week for 52 weeks and you're putting in the keywords, you're increasing the number of URLs that you found. Remember, Google's in the content business. The more content you put, the more Google loves you. But the flip side is you can't do what we call keyword stacking, where your blog was about, I don't know, how great, the tomato crop was, and the keyword stacking was, jobs in Chicago, manufacturing jobs in Chicago. That's what they call keyword stacking, because those keywords have nothing to do with the fact that your blog was about how great the tomato crop was. But that's probably the most effective way, because it takes time to move up. Probably if you're in a market, some of your competitors have been doing SEO for 10 years. So, you have to understand realistic expectations.
That's a good point. That's a good point. All right, so blogs. Well, then what about beyond blogs? What about for the actual website itself? Because I know there's a thing called technical SEO,
Okay.
as well, that people should be aware of.
Yeah, I think you want to in your website. There's ability for you to view what's called your source code, and your source code is basically the instructions that make your website show as they do. You want to just kind of look in there, and you'll typically look in the first 4 to 5 lines of the source code and see if there's any type of keywords that describe who you are, whether it's your location, where you're located, whether it's your staffing firm, whether you're doing IT. So probably one of the easiest ways is kind of just look at your source code and make sure you have some basic keywords in there that talk about the business you do and where you are located. That's probably the easiest way. And you could call someone, or you could probably Google it online how to do that. It's not that difficult. You don't want to be changing the code on your own unless you have someone that understands how to do that. But that, the SEO setup, I always say, is very important, because Google, when they're looking to rank websites between 1 and 100, they have to figure out some way of which site is number 1 and which site is 100. And obviously, one of the important things is having those keywords, having the code set up properly. And there's a lot of others, traffic and all those things. But, from Google's perspective, if you don't have any SEO set up in your website's not set up properly.
I see. Okay, that's a good point. I tell you, is it if someone and with that said, if someone wanted to actually use a service, because obviously it is a lot of work, and
Right.
and again, our audience, we love our audience, and many of them are very smart, but also many of them are Neanderthals, right? But they're really good at recruiting. Some of the biggest billers I know are some of the least technically adept.
We're just big dumb animals.
Yeah. Which
Well,
is why I
everyone's
love
good in
recruiters
their
so much.
space. You're the
Yeah.
expert in your space, right? I
So-
couldn't recruit if I tried.
Well, for someone who doesn't have the technical chops to do, or just doesn't have the time,
Right.
you're
Time,
you're
yeah.
too busy stacking cash from other billings. What would you suggest they do? So if they wanted to use you, right? Where do they go?
Sure.
Yeah, walk us through the process.
Reach out, asjpartners.com. Reach out, contact us, give us a call. We're happy to help. We'll kind of talk to you. We'll assess what you're trying to do. We can kind of give you an idea of what we can do, what has typically worked, not that it's necessarily going to work for you, but we're very good at working with a particular client and providing services that fit their needs, as opposed to, hey, this is how you do this. This is how you do that. So we can work with a client in a variety of ways, and we're happy to help.
Excellent. We'll go there. Actually, it's been a great conversation, Steve, and you provided some really good insights, especially around SEO, because I know that's the area that everybody asks about. Very few people actually know what to do with it, or how to get some of that SEO juice. So go to asjpartners.com, check Steve out, and then in addition, we'll start wrapping things up here. In addition, if you are interested in learning about the gross margin method, go to backofficenow.com/GMM. I have a great guide you can download called the Art of the Killer Sales Call, a no bullshit guide for recruiters. Go to realdsp.me/killer-sales. So that's realdsp.me/killer-sales. And of course, if you're looking for a VA, head up chriswessel.com. So with that said, I think it's time to wrap things up here, Steve. Do you have any final thoughts? Let's say for the folks watching this, and by the way, for the folks watching this, before we wrap, like it, love the show. Every like you give us means you'll close one extra deal this year. Guarantee it. But seriously,
hit the like button. I'm hitting the like button right now.
That's right. Like. So, Steve, any parting words of wisdom for the folks watching this?
Yeah, my parting words of wisdom is, and I don't want it to come off and sound self-serving, but do some marketing. Reach out and let people know you're there. Do something you're comfortable with. Let them know how you differentiate yourselves from everyone else. Because if they don't know who you are, they don't know how to reach out to you. So there's plenty of services that can fit every client and everyone's particular budget. But the reason people do marketing is it works.
Being the world's best kept secret does not pay the bills. Which is very, very true. All right, folks. Well, thank you very much, Chris, Neil. Any parting words before we riggedy wrap it?
No. Hopefully, by the next show, they'll know all of us and not just you. That's my parting word.
Hopefully, but I wouldn't hold your breath on that one. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Well, feel free to rip into me next show because I certainly deserve it.
We will.
All right, folks. Well, thank you very much for watching. Again, if you're watching live, comment live. Watching the replay, comment replay. Like and love the show. Every like is a deal. All right. And with that said, folks, we'll see you next week. Steve, thank you so much for being on the show. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Guys, enjoy the rest of the summer.